Good evening, viewers. A very warm welcome back to Candid Talk. Today's episode is entitled The New Normal. Now, as we all know, the ongoing global COVID pandemic has forced a newly disrupted mode of living and working upon all of us. And many are calling this state the new normal. But now, over a month into the nationwide unlock mode, all of us are still trying to come to terms with it. And to discuss how to address, how to make sense of this new normal, we have with us an esteemed set of panelists. Vijay Iyer, Managing Director at ValueBridge Capital and former Chief Learning Officer at Deloitte US India offices. Harilal Bhaskar, CEO at Atal Incubation Center and also a mentor of change at Atal Innovation Mission. Palak Vats, who's the HR Director at HarperCollins India. And last but not least, Saira Shah Halim, social activist, educator, and SAARC Women's Award winner. A very warm welcome to all of you. So, Vijay, if we may, we'll get started with you, and we'll probably pick up the conversation with your earlier avatar of learning, right? Learning and development. Now, across the board, many are looking at this pandemic situation as a kind of an opportunity sent to us and say, all right, maybe this is how learning across the board from a B2C standpoint, for corporates, for individuals, for schools, everywhere, right? Online and digital is the mode to go. Is this really a catch-all? Is this really like a panacea? What are your views on the new mode of learning?
Okay. Hey, thanks, and thank you for having me. I don't know if this is a catch-all at this point in time. I think most organizations, universities, schools have responded. I think there's been a reactive approach to this in terms of scrambling and putting together stuff. Corporates, of course, have a longer history with e-learning, and therefore they've managed it a little better. It's also a lot less structured and time-bound there. But with universities, with schools, colleges, I think in India it was useful that it got timed with the summer vacation, and schools and colleges and universities got some time to prep. But I don't think that people have figured it out. It's still work in progress in my view. Directionally, I would say more than ever now, there will be a use of technology in everything that schools. There'll be a far larger use of technology than has been in the past. That can be said, but will things shift completely online? Very unlikely. I mean, there's a famous Clay Shirky once said, institutions will seek to preserve the problems to which they are the solution. So I think universities and colleges will seek to preserve what they bring to the table, which is the collegiality, the social side of it, the community, and so on, which I think is equally important when compared to academics. And to that extent, I believe we'll find a new balance at some point in time. But I don't think this is the new normal where kids sit in front of a computer screen for 6 hours a day and do classes on Zoom. I don't think that's the normal.
Right, absolutely. And in terms of the checks and balances, the safeguards, right? Because whenever you're talking about technology, that comes with its own set of pitfalls. So you're talking about, the possibility of data hacking, and therein, all kinds of mischief happening. So what's your sense of that as a source of concern for us, even during this, interim period?
I mean, I think it'll happen, and to some extent, we'll figure out solutions for that. I don't believe that that's going to be a major problem. I think the larger problem is the lack of inclusion that this kind of thing brings about, right? Which is there's a small set of people who can afford a computer at home, who can have a room in the house where a child can study peacefully, and work. I mean, even working from home, right? All of us are some of us are blessed to have homes that have enough space to do that. But I think when you look at kids going to government schools, when you look at kids studying in community colleges and so on, they don't have access to the technology that uh, some young people do. And I think for most of them, they're not just not going to school. So if I, for example, I spoke to the lady who comes to cook in our home, or the lady
Mm-hmm.
who comes to clean in our home, and I asked about their children, and they said the children are at home. There's nothing happening. They don't have classes, they don't have school, they're just at home hanging around. So the larger problem to me is that technology will skew the levels, will kind of play out at an inclusion this thing. People who have access to technology will be able to benefit from this, whereas a lot of people will get left out.
Right, indeed. And of course, we'll come back to the learning program scenario later on in the
Sure.
show. Let's first shift the lens to something which is extremely critical and something that you are now a part of, which is the startup ecosystem, right? And as we all know, on the one hand, both the unorganized and the organized sector have been really, really severely impacted. There's been rampant wage cuts across the board, notwithstanding the government sort of advisory and imperative to the contrary. There has also and continues to be a fair bit of retrenchment across the board, right? All of that puts even more pressure on the entrepreneurs, on the solopreneurs, and the entire sort of mode of being Atmanirbhar, right? So, where you are and in your ecosystem, how do you see the short term, the immediate term impact on the startup systems, on the startup founders, on the level of funding, on the level of investment, and other kind of support that they would have to make themselves successful?
Okay, so I think we need to classify startups into various buckets, right? And there's startups like, let's take Byju's, or slightly bigger companies which have raised a lot of money, and
Mhm,
they have the typical problems that any large corporate house has or large company has, right? Then there are
yes.
startups which are in mid stage in terms of their fundraising, in terms of their burns, and so on, and they have a different set of problems in terms of uh, uh, unable to raise. They have to cut costs. A lot of their businesses have gone away, and they have a different kind of that's a different lens to look at. The third group is really small startups which are looking to raise for their first time and so on. I think with them, the issue has been actually one of survival. In across the board, I would say there has been the issue has been one of cutting cost and managing and surviving, right?
Hmm.
With all companies, with all the funds that we've spoken to, the general sense is get through 2021, right? Get through fiscal 21, and if you survive, then your kind will figure out what to do. There's been sectors which have got badly hit. I would say hospitality, tourism, eating out, those kinds of businesses, anything that's related to discretionary spending in some sense, right?
Hmm.
By
Hmm.
and large, has gone away. None of us are going out and buying a lot of clothes. None of us are going out and watching movies. None of us are going out and eating in restaurants. None of us are going out and flying or traveling or taking holidays. So any business that was built around some of these dimensions are have changed forever, I would say, right? There are sectors that have boomed. I would look at health technology, ed tech, agri, uh, uh, financial services, particularly on the collection side, B2B
Hmm.
SaaS. B2B by and large has B2B SaaS has actually seen a lot of interest. So I would say that it's a mixed bag. There are always going to, whenever something like this happens, right? And there's going to be some people who benefit, some people who don't benefit, and investment will find the ones that are looking hot today or something of that sort. That said, I would say most investors, most VC funds have been very prudent. They've looked at their portfolios first. I think portfolio protection was the focus, I would say, in March and April, right? Uh, companies that they've already invested in. Do they need more money? How many of them will survive? I think that was largely the this thing. In May and June, I would say they started looking out at options. They started formulating their strategies around what to invest. And I would say in the last 2 weeks, I've had conversations with over a dozen VC funds, uh, and all of them are looking at making investments. All of them are saying we're looking at deals. All of them are signing term sheets. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that there is any lack of investment activity. Ticket sizes have come down. So anybody who was cutting a check for $10 million is now saying, okay, you know what, I'll do a ticket of five. And the other challenge, of course, is I wouldn't invest in a company if I haven't met the founders. And right
Right.
now, given the travel ban and restrictions, that's becoming difficult, right? So you're trying to make investment decisions on Zoom calls and
Mm-hmm.
video chat and so on. So you're willing to take a smaller risk, but not willing to write the big checks. So I think some of that is happening. If you look at overall macro, I would say, I saw GST collection data for June. GST collection data for June was about 90,000 crore rupees. In January, it was about 110, 120,000 crores. So we're really kind of, I think, there's a pickup happening on economic activity. There are some
Mm-hmm.
sectors that hasn't happened in, and that's just, I guess, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out for those sectors. Some sectors certainly have seen a lot more activity than normal, education being one of them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Vijay, thanks for your views, and we'll come back to you later in the program. Uh, Talking about startups, actually, Harilal gives me the perfect segue to talk about the government sponsored or the government sort of initiated incubation centers, of which you had one of the largest ones. So, tell us in terms of, let's say, the Atmanirbhar Bharat program, right? What is the mandate for incubation centers and fora such as yours? And what is the government doing in terms of helping the startup founders take things forward? As Vijay said, A, to survive, just to tide out the crisis, and then to take things to the next level.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Again, opportunity to speak. Uh, if you really look at in terms of what Adult Innovation Mission is doing, because everybody know this challenge is an opportunity, right? That's what actually, there is a saying actually in Africa every morning, in the gas will actually start running actually because he want to be outrun the lion who is actually capturing it. So everybody is on the race now. Even in this situation, what Adult Innovation Mission is doing actually, we integrating all the incubator centers across India and collaboration. That's the word actually I have to really emphasis here. The collaboration is happening because you don't need to reinvent the wheel again because you have already have a set of processes and best practices, but you are using alone right now. So instead of that, actually you can collaborate because it's a bad time. Somebody has finding a new things. Example, even we know that the open source in software engineering, right? Same way, even in the medical system also getting online wherever I think that we were spreading through the newspaper. Even one of the Korean company we're actually getting into some kind of information about the vaccine who actually caused COVID-19. They put across in the online platform so that everybody can see that actually when get from that the information then can develop. Similar way, the government also taking an initiative. They're creating a training platform called iCrust. Collaborating with one of the larger the private company like with Dani Corporation and so they also coming with integrating and creating an online platform where actually every incubator in India can collaborate and share the knowledge. And they're also coming with investor platform where actually all the investor can keep on board on the platform. And then the experience startup who is maybe on the remote incubation center who is having a good capability or a good thesis, already proven thesis actually can be tested by investor. That's
Mm-hmm.
one part. And if you really look at in terms of a single incubator, what we are doing actually, we seen actually startup all are trying to pivot themselves. But sometimes they are only looking for the immediate solutions. Example, COVID. Some of our startup actually have created mask, 3D mask, 3D printing, as well as the face mask So they are actually for the need of the hour. That doesn't mean we don't know what's really needed in the new normal, right? So maybe even recently we had actually on our independent days, Prime Minister going to announce COVID vaccine. If it is happened, do you really see actually long term? This is a long term strategy. Is it really a pivoting or just solving a problem for the time? That actually we need to have really understand actually what will be the new normal. We don't know, so we need to. Our startup is actually experimenting what actually going to be long term. We know everybody is getting into digital transformation. Everybody is collaborating online. And that's what actually even I heard actually recently some of the venture capitalists actually did every even for the they did online, even term sheet testing came online. Maybe not all of them, but some of them actually trying experimenting themselves to see that opportunity. So I think what startup is trying, and government is trying, and startup is helping the startup in terms of today. Actually, as you said, the Atmanirbhar, right? Prime Minister has announced a challenge for replacing all the startups. We actually started, saying that we don't want to, use Chinese applications. So government is today just set up, is some application. If you are a startup or a
Yeah.
student or a technology, you can create your own, challenge on the set of startup, set of mobile
Okay.
application. You can.
So Harilal, let me just quickly interject here. When you're talking about just incubation, let's just take your institute. Let's just take Atal Incubation Center. At the moment, what is the mandate that you have? Because a lot of people, and this is maybe I'm voicing or reflecting the ignorance that a lot of startup founders have, right? So, okay, how do I apply? Are they taking in new players? What is the kind of budget? Is it easy to get in, or do I have to fill in like 15,000 forms, right? Because it's associated with the government. These are some of the real fears and challenges that people are faced, right? These are some of the questions. So, purely in terms of
Right.
AIC, talk to us about the incubation program. Talk to us about the appetite that you have to take in new players. Talk to us, give us a feel to the extent that you can, if you can, about the budget that you have to help new startups get into the ecosystem.
Yeah. Right. Government is started giving 10 CR to each of the most of the incubation center recently started, right? So the complete governance is with the incubation center itself. If you really look at in terms of the opportunity, right? There are many startup actually. Even an incubator can decide whom he can give the seed fund. If you look in terms of the approach is actually top to bottom, right? We are talking about many strategies. We say actually these are the opportunity what you have. But when you look at in terms of a startup, he actually need to approach the incubator nearby, and that's depending on discrimination of the incubator. They say that this is what actually maybe either kind of a experience what they don't have, or the experience what they have. They look in terms of what actually need to make a decision. But government has a plan actually to make sure that a lot of employment is created due to the new startup ecosystem, right? They actually successful startup will generate jobs. But if you really look at in terms of a distributed amount across, where actually you driving by a top-down approach, there are challenges in terms of an incubator or in a startup. You really look at a startup, actually startup is approaching the incubator where actually he is incubated. And incubator has its own norms and conditions. Then actually the realistic, what are the implementation actually government want to do, actually not reaching out because of the reason that everywhere actually, as you rightly said, 15,000 form. I don't say the 15,000 forms are there. However, the challenges of steps, right? Where actually you applying
Mhm.
incubator is applying for the grant, and then the grant is reaching the government is screening that is only for the grant. But government is already given the seed fund to the incubator. And this is actually this incubator can decide which startup I can invest the money on, right? Where actually startup, some of the incubator are really proactive. They have already experience in the market. They have successful incubator. They know actually the managing the incubator as such. They are doing very well actually. For example, if you look at give an example of Sign IIT Mumbai, or some of the private incubator who recently get into Atal Incubation Center. They're doing well because they have been in the market. They know how actually the cohort can be run. They run a cohort program where actually they actually take a startup and then give a seed fund, and then the initial stage, and then of course equity will be by way for the
Mhm.
the cohort for the seed fund. That's okay, but they are getting the seed fund and they're getting into larger exposure, and they're connecting to the larger ecosystem where they can connect to the the angel investor or a VC fund, right? But in the challenge, if you relate it in the government form, as you rightly said, some of the challenges they have is like getting the fund. Even though they are very good, their thesis is proven, the business model is proven, and then they can be really sustainable in the market. But however, they are getting the challenge because they keep on applying the grants, but they are not getting the grants because of the processes, right? The bureaucratic process where actually either in your incubation center you are not matured enough to make a decision, or the process
Right.
actually government laid out not
Right.
there.
So Harilal, sorry to interject again. Right? Isn't this a good time for us to revisit the entire protocol and the process? Right? Because we may have a very elaborate process, which the government and the powers that we would think that okay, this is the best way of getting new players on the board. We have so many of these stages, so many of these checks and balances, and all of that, which is fine. But at a scenario where you're still very much in a COVID paradigm, in a COVID world, you're struggling to make ends
Right.
meet, right? Isn't this a very good time to actually revisit, simplify, look at what's not working, what is redundant, and just trim them away and make it easier for players to come on board? I mean, why is that sacrosanct? Why should that be sacrosanct when nothing else in the world is?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a right point. Actually, brought it out actually because somebody work in a corporate, they have a right processes actually in place actually, right? They look at in terms of suppose you have a
Actually,
vision
actually,
and then
no.
vision.
Actually, no. And we'll talk about that. Corporates are also revising their processes real time as we speak. Nothing is sacrosanct
Yeah,
anymore, my friend.
true. But of course, the new normal. Actually, challenges are different. Whatever seen in the earlier is different. So of course, you know to understand actually digital transformation, how actually you change the entire processes. Maybe from the starting from an incubator, bottom to top approach. Actually, what startups see. You look at from your startup point of view, what are the challenges they're facing. You capture that scenarios, and then getting the incubator. What are the scenarios? They are actually challenged that they are facing, and getting to the larger system, and then you have to work from back to top, and then also factor what are the new challenges in the new normal you're going to face, right? Then also the startup actually getting a seed fund, especially this is a challenge at this point actually, because government also is thinking like many COVID solution. Of course, the government is funding many COVID challenges, right? Giving a medical field, especially as Mr. Vijay said, actually there are government is really looking at some of the sectors are really booming actually in tech or in healthcare. But what about other sector? What actually you going to do there? Actually, we need to really fix the problem, right? Either what will the next step they have to take so that they can go for a long term sustainable manner. So these are the area actually as a from a government perspective they can look at in terms of that, and then give a solution for collaborating with a larger ecosystem, or giving a connecting with a case study from the best cases. Maybe we can take the best cases who already started some of the countries and some of the ecosystem, or already taking the best practices and implementing, right? So we can, of course, adopt those systems.
Okay. All right. Great. And I can see a large number of questions. So a quick aside to the viewers, what we will do is we will dedicate the last 10, 12 minutes at least, if not more, of this program to take up the questions that you are asking. Please continue to feed them in. I'm having a look at them as they come. And the last 10, 15 minutes, we'll take them up. Okay. So Harilal, we'll come back to you because there are quite a few questions for you and Vijay towards the end. We'll segue to, because we talked about corporates, right, and how they're having to think on the ground and think on their feet and also calibrate the way that they work. So Palak, from an HR standpoint, would you agree that perhaps for the first time in many years, right, the office of the CHRO has come under the spotlight, right? Because the CFO and the marketing guys and the operation guys and all the other sort of cool dudes in the corporate sector somehow find themselves in a complete fix, and they look to HR to give them solutions to make things work in the strange new times. What's been your experience?
So I agree when you say that there has been a spotlight to the CHROs, and the organizations are looking forward to their HR resources to come up with solutions, help, and all sorts of things. While I would also want to add that it totally depends on an organization. So today, yes, we're dealing with this pandemic, but fortunately, being in an organization where HR is always consulted in all decisions, and um, are also a part of while major business decisions are being taken. So which gives I would say it lays importance to human resources. There are organizations who believe in giving equal importance, not just in this pandemic, but
Mm-hmm.
overall. While during this pandemic, yes, it's true, there are a lot of challenges that are coming in, and corporates are struggling with trying to figure out what all can be done to make sure people are at ease, they're happy, and they continue to adopt to this new normal.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, it was very difficult. We had challenges around people coming and complaining about technology at home. They were not used to of this new normal of operating for so long from their homes, especially when you have the entire family operating and being at home. So the focus on work was losing somewhere initially. But as we go along, I think over the last 2 months, I've seen people have adopted it pretty well. Um, every now and then, the challenges have started to differ. Nowadays, the challenges are around people getting into anxiety, people getting into depressions, and complaining about loneliness, being at home. So a lot of these things are changing. While at one hand, I would say business is big time impacted. People are trying to figure out ways to be more innovative. Like in our
Mm-hmm.
case, while there are a lot of people like me who would be avid readers and would like to read physical books. I think people have moved to a different model of getting into audiobooks, ebooks. So the business model has completely changed. So not just that, this clubbed with problems that people are facing, challenges that people are facing. I think I would just say that this is what currently exists.
Right. Palak, let's talk about things in the new unlock mode. So in the new unlock mode, as an employer,
Yeah.
you are
Mm-hmm.
definitely entitled to get your staff to work, right?
Yeah.
But there's also the choice of being more benign, being more empathetic, and reducing the risk of secondary infection, particularly if, when people are going back to elderly parents and family members. And your
Yeah.
organization, like many others, have consciously taken a decision that, for the time being, and actually for an indefinite period, right, until
Mm-hmm.
and unless otherwise specified, people will continue to work from home. So, on the one hand,
Yeah.
there's a government mandate which says you can ask your workforce to come into work, and then there's a choice that you guys make, right? Talk to us
Yeah.
about this choice and the importance of this, because many people aren't actually exercising this choice. They're saying, okay, unlock, now I can, because I can, I must call people into work.
Uh, Avik, I would bring in corporate responsibility here, and I would also bring individual responsibility towards society at this point in time. Yes, unlock has happened. The government has opened markets and malls and offices. Private, a lot of offices have asked their staff to come back immediately and resume work.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's a responsibility that each one of us has towards one another. So while I was in the unlock, while the unlock was happening, I happened to venture out to the market to buy some grocery item for myself, and I see a lot of people roaming around without masks and
Mm-hmm.
gloves, and not ensuring social distancing. This is something that will not help any one of us, and it is an individual's responsibility to ensure that each one of us, not just me, but each one of us here in the society, are safe. With this view, I think our organization believes and very strongly believe that the health and safety of people comes much above business and anything else. I would rather we would rather compromise a little on the business aspect of it than
Mhm.
compromising on somebody's life and health. And that is the reason, consciously a lot of organizations are deciding that a lot of their roles can operate from home. Not that, each one of us were used to of it, but I think times have taught us last 3 months operating, sitting at home and operating and balancing work with personal life. I think all of us have gone used to it. And there are a lot of roles even in normal scenario. I would say there are not a lot of roles which essentially do not require to be present at work. We
Mhm.
all could look at making sure people who can operate from home and who are not physically required to be at work, wherein they do not have any interface with clients, or essentially do not have to be present working on back end stuff. I think they should be permanently allowed to operate from home, and that is how it is going to be in the coming future.
Absolutely. You talked about the roles being curated and the need for these roles to be calibrated, right? Due to these
Yeah.
changing times. Let's talk a little bit about the role of the leaders, right? Because
Mhm.
traditionally, and I'm going to
Mhm.
risk saying this, to a large extent, the managers, senior managers, and above across the large corporates have equated their role as leaders with the amount of supervision that they have. So there's a
Mhm.
direct
Yeah.
correlation. So I need to have
Mhm.
100 people. I'm going to walk the floor 50 times a day, right? I
Yeah.
exaggerate. I'm going to keep talking to all of them. I supervise
Mhm.
them. Therefore, I must be a great leader. Now, suddenly,
Mhm.
I come to a paradigm where they're all working remotely, they're working from home.
Mhm.
I can do a checkpoint call, but I can't do a checkpoint call 5 hours every day. I can do,
Yeah.
so how, what does it mean for the leaders, and how is it that they are going to calibrate their own roles and figure out
Mhm.
what to do in this new normal?
So I see a lot of changes, in supervision and managing teams is what I would say. While I say the during the pandemic, when people are not interacting one on one, they're not seeing each other physically. I think virtual meetings, the number of virtual meetings that are conducted have gone up significantly. I remember for while I was working outside the office space. My interactions um, in normal course during the week would have been very limited with people. It would be only work related, but I think my responsibility now extends more towards knowing the well-being of people, and hence I'm connecting more with people. As far as leaders are concerned, they're also concerned about their people. There is a fair mix of organizations who are still ensuring close supervision, and a fair mix of organizations who believe that this is tough times. Yes, people are responsible for their work. They have responsibilities. They consider their workforce to be matured and
Mhm.
responsible, and I think close supervision has gone down in those cases. So there are cases where I have heard employees being asked to take breaks, even lunch breaks, at this point in time at a particular hour, and even their break timings are being monitored. Wherein I have seen organizations where who are open to discussing and who are open to problem discussing problems of people and understanding, giving them flexibility at work. People can
Mhm.
start work late in the morning, or especially for women, during the afternoon time, they can take time off work and extend work till late evening. So I think there is a fair mix of organizations, some of them having close supervision, some of them allowing their people enough flexibility.
Mhm. Um, Palak, at this point, I'm going to have to ask you a very painful question, but a very important one. You see, we psychologically, you'd agree that we always, our default setting, if you will, is to live in denial, right? Is this something that happens to other people, A, to people in another far-flung part of the world, B, to people who may be acquaintances of acquaintances, and then it slowly starts to come closer to home, right? What happens when the worst takes place? When you're part of an organization as a leader, and this is going to be very, very important advice for leaders in corporates or organizations across the board, where one of your own has been infected, and very regrettably, very unfortunately, as in your case, in your organization's case, actually succumbed to the disease, right? What
Yeah.
are the mechanisms for coping? What is it that you do to keep things together at an organizational level, to mourn, but also to use this to bond better within the organization from a people dimension?
Okay, so I agree, Avik. These are very tough times, and while you hear people suffering and getting infected with COVID, you don't relate to it unless somebody closer and nearby, in your vicinity, catches infection, and you see the trauma that the person, family members, and people around him or her go through. Having said that, yes, it is very painful, very shocking to know, that somebody close to you has passed away because of this infection. Um, I mean, I've very recently dealt with it. I think people have been very emotionally low. There were days, there were a couple of days when people didn't want to work. Productivity was low, and I guess this is the time where leaders play an important part. Um, I think this is the time where love and compassion towards your own people makes a lot of difference. Connecting with people, calling them regularly, checking just not about themselves but about their families, is very important at this point in time. I've had cases where people complaining about depression and all sorts of anxiety issues. So, as an organization, to help people, we made sure all insurance, policies. We brought in a lot of insurance coverage for our employees just to make sure employees have that bit of security with them. Um, God forbid if something happens to anybody, we have a backup. We have a support system in place to make sure some bit of support is provided to the person and the family. So COVID insurance cover, for that matter, a lot of organizations didn't consider term life insurance as important till the pandemic hit. I think it's become all the more important that employees are covered with under life insurance at this point in time. Providing counseling, help on mental well-being. I think this is very, very important. So I think there is a shift on how the organizations have started investing. Earlier,
Mm-hmm.
the investment was not, in a normal situation, organizations would not have thought about, investing so much in people. This has taught us the value of human resources, the value of people, and how critical it is to see people, hale and hearty. I think the investments have now shifted from development of people to safety and security and well-being. And hence, all the investments today are happening towards making sure, health insurance has been given, all the coverages are given, and in case still people need any help, we have doctors on call so that we keep connected, and I guess
Absolutely.
that's about it.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that many of our viewers and many of the other corporates, and not just corporates, but organizations large and small, and even startups, invest far more in their people. I hope they're listening to your views, because this is absolutely critical. It's not about technology, it's not about people, it's not about processes, it's not about all checks and balances. But finally, if our own workforce, if our own people are not motivated, right? If they don't feel
True.
safe, if they cannot work,
Yeah.
then everything literally, I mean, the entire purpose is kind of defeated. We'll come back to you for the last leg of questions. Sarah, over to you. We talk about the need for you know uh, resilience. We talk about the need for positivity. And what do you think, from the point of influencers such as yourself, right? Um, to what extent should we be evangelizing the need not just for resilience, but to have the inherent positivity to carry on some semblance of life? Of course, it's not normalcy, but at least life.
Okay, well, Ovik, there are three things here, which the COVID-19 is teaching us. So definitely it's a challenging time, unprecedented, in all parameters. However, we also need to look at the window of opportunities giving, the world over. So firstly, what we need to do is we need to understand whether we as a country have the infrastructure to deal with a pandemic, and we still do not understand the ramifications. We are still learning, unlearning, relearning a whole plethora of different things. So this is again a work in process. So firstly, now there are three things. Firstly is responding to the health crisis, whatever the health crisis may be. The government agencies along with the citizens need to respond, and with response comes in recovery. How are we recovering from the impact of COVID-19? That is a major challenge, because firstly is responding, second is recovering. How many people have healed, and we are only talking about the fatalities, how many people died, however we are not even talking about the recoveries. I think moment we start talking about the recoveries, we'll start feeling a little positive about the whole scenario. Now thirdly is, we talked about 2 points. First is respond, and we spoke about recovering. We also need to talk about how do we thrive. Now what do? We cannot be sitting and getting depressed or feeling suicidal or whatever. Like, if you have noticed, according to various surveys, a lot of people have died of suicide. Domestic violence has increased in household. However, like I said, we do not have a choice, because COVID-19 is a work in progress. Nobody has any real answers to questions right now. If you ask me, if you even ask the experts on when is it going to end, because if you get down into the history of pandemics, we've had the Black Death, we've of course had the Spanish flu, we've had epidemics, and the human civilization has fought those epidemics and pandemics and thrived. So today also, if you look at our generation, probably after more than 100 years after the Spanish flu, yeah, we've of course battled different kind of diseases, serious health scares. We've had AIDS, we've had HIV, we've of course had so many other global diseases. However, this is something new. It's a pandemic, and the proportion, the size, if you look at it, the different people, the experts, the healthcare experts are saying that the deaths, of course, are the numbers, the health scare is again something that we cannot fathom. So right now we do not have a choice but to learn to live with the virus. I don't think it's appropriate to say enjoy living with the virus, because end of the day all of us are afraid, right? We are apprehensive. So I will not say enjoy the virus. I will say we have to learn how to live with the virus, because the virus is not going to go anywhere in the next couple of years. It's not going to go in, say, like 2 years, 3 years. It hasn't come in with a time frame of when it's going to go over. We do not know about any deadline about
Yeah.
the
So Sarah, I understand your point. So definitely, it does not have an expiry date, unfortunately. So tell me about this, right? This is something that Palak talked about, and this is everyone who steps out of their homes can observe this. There are large segments of society at the moment which unfortunately are not following social distancing norms and are not following hygiene norms, right? Not wearing masks, not having sanitizers, not wearing gloves, all of it, right? As an influencer, what would be your message to them?
Okay, so like I said, I'm iterating again, Ovik, as I said that I will not emphasize that it's great and it's all normal, because what is normal is again highly debatable. What is normal? Because I've heard speeches from experts who are saying, why do you want to go back to the old normal? Because if you look at the rudimentary way of living, this is how people lived, in the bygone, years. People used to step out only for essentials. People used to essentially live at home. The hygiene levels were high. So if a pandemic is going to teach hygiene, to people globally, then I feel, we have totally missed, the bus in the last couple of decades. If a global pandemic is going to teach people how to bathe, or how to wash hands, or maintain social distancing, then I think we really need to take the new learnings really seriously. And I feel this is what the pandemic is teaching us. Like a NASA study said that in the past 20 years, our pollution levels were at the lowest. So if you look at the Kerala model of development and how they've been able to, be such a stellar example of a successful model, we must study it. We must study Vietnam. Look at it, not a single death in Vietnam. They, of course, have had cases. But if you study these countries' models and see how they've been able to contain the virus, I think we would do better as a world and as members of a global community. So I would tell people that, yes, it's not going anywhere. However, we need to normalize living with the COVID-19. We need to step out. We need to go out and work. We cannot remain isolated. Man is a social animal, end of the day. So it's important, while we are undergoing this unlock, this period, meet friends when it's important, go out. We went to to a resort recently, because for a staycation, there were people who were sending WhatsApps that now the hotel industry needs to boost up its economy and everything. So they are ideating new ways on how they can, somehow get a boost in their economy. So I think it's a great way, because the hotel industry will, look at new ideations, how to get the customers back. They will ideate staycations. They will ideate, these customized dinners, lunches, and everything. So do step out, go about, but with precautions. Please wear your mask, maintain social distancing, 6 feet away from whoever you're meeting. And a namaste, I think, goes a long way. I'm a big advocate of namaste. So I think we really need to follow that in practice. No more hugging and whatever. Because like I said, we need to get back to the rudimentary way of living, stepping out only when it is important, and venturing out for the bare essentials. Because today we are doing luxury shopping. Today, all of us have become mall rats. It's not necessary to just hang around in malls and do what? It's a colossal waste of time. But like I said, in this challenging time, we are also looking at window of opportunities. New businesses are coming up. We are seeing healthcare booming. We are seeing a complete influx of online learning, which has seen a huge, like I say, profit. New apps are coming, and people are experimenting with the e-commerce, e-shopping, new apps. People are binge watching Netflix, Amazon
I'm not sure
Prime, and
that's a great
whatnot.
thing.
Yeah, the OTT platform is a huge window of opportunity. So what if you cannot go and watch a movie in a theater? You can always sit home and watch a movie on Netflix. Yeah, you can grab your popcorn, a cup of tea, and your
I think
Coke or
most of
whatever.
us are kind of succumbing to that temptation sometime or the other. All right, Saira, we'll come back for a last few set of questions. So we've got about 10-12 minutes to go. Can we have the questions coming up, please? I remember quite a few. So I'll start with you, Vijay. This is quite pertinent. So how is this current situation affecting the valuation metrics of startups? And let's talk about the second category, not the Byju's and not absolutely incipient ones. But it's a startup. It's got 10 people. There's been some revenues. There's been some traction on the ground. I've had 2 or 3 years of this runway, right? At this point in time, what would be the kind of impact? Vijay, you're on mute.
Yeah. So I don't think that valuations of startups are, disconnected from the rest of the market, right? So if the Sensex goes from 40,000 to 25,000 and HDFC Bank is available at a 40% discount to its peak prices, an investor will say, you know what, let me just buy HDFC Bank. Far better, far more confident, far more liquid. A startup is the most illiquid investment that anybody can make. Okay, there is no liquidity in that market unless you go and sell it to other investors. And to that extent, I would say valuation multiples will fall, and there is no magic to that. In any case, I think that there was a little bit of a hype around valuation multiples, and there is some probably correction now. I think it'll flow with the market, and as as other asset classes become expensive, valuation people will, and as people make returns from them. So the other thing is, money has got sucked out of the system, right? Where does money into the startup system come from? Where do people in VCs get their money from? They get their money from the stock market, right? So wealthy people put money into VC funds. So if that money, that liquidity is getting sucked out, some of the smaller VC funds have had issues with closing funds or deploying or having their investors ask questions. I would say that newer investments, the multiples are.
Okay. Right. Someone's phone is buzzing.
Someone's
I think.
phone is.
Yeah. So another one. We'll be talking, and I'm actually going to just mix questions here.
Okay.
So segueing from the NASSCOM report, and you can get into this, Vijay, and then we'll have Harilal come into this. I mean, NASSCOM's report from May says that 60% of startups in India today, in their early stages, are likely to fail. And this is more true when you're talking about the B2E kind of a segment, right? So if I club this with the opportunities, so let's say I had just formulated a plan, okay, 6 months ago, and I was trying to enter the system, because there are a lot of people like that as well. And this may give me actually an opportunity to say, all right, I'm going to put a stop onto that. And the market does present a few opportunities. Can I tap onto that and channelize my effort in my direction and try and harness the power of my network into that? So in that scenario, what would you say to like really, really early start stages startups, right? We're kind of at an ideation planning stage. What would be the kind of a sector that they should think about? Where are the opportunities at this stage?
So, see, I think people don't start up companies by looking at, I mean, sure, there are some people who do that, but in general, people look at problems around them and then seek to solve them, right? And fundamentally, that should be the reason for starting up a company. There are lots of problems to solve. There are lots of new opportunities to go after. And to that extent, I mean, I don't think I have any sectoral recommendations in that sense, right? My intention is not to say sector A is better than sector B and you should go after this. You should pursue whatever problem you believe you think there is an economic opportunity in solving and you're passionate about solving. And this is a cycle, right? This is uh, uh, almost like a 0 year or a free period in school, where nothing happens. And there's a little bit of a pause people have hit. I would actually urge young people to go out and try stuff, right? This is a fairly low opportunity cost situation where many people have lost their jobs, they're not finding jobs. I would say go out and try something new, right? And maybe something comes of it. There is there's two ways of looking at it, and to my mind, people who are just starting out, revisit your business plans. Make sure do the more prudent things, right? Make sure you have enough money to survive for 24 months. My advice to anybody who's thinking of starting up is make sure you have enough money to live your lifestyle, whichever way, send your kids to school, pay the house rent, live comfortably for at least 24 months. Your business is not going to pay you a salary or allow you to take out money. If it does so earlier than that, that's great. But for that.
But that's the time frame that we have to sort of budget for, right?
We got to invest, right?
Very important.
The larger challenge, of course, is that I know I'm running over. The larger challenge, of course, is that we hear about the hyped up startups. Raising money is a stage in a company. Raising money is not the end of a company, right? Companies are here to solve problems and be viable entities for long periods of time. It's nobody says that I went and took a bank loan and you get a cover story. Taking capital from a venture capitalist is the equivalent of taking a large term loan. And
yet that is what makes headlines, as opposed to challenges and problems, actual business problems that have been solved and the impact made to communities. It's like, okay, so many million raised, right? And that gets you featured in a business plan.
I'll go back to what I said earlier, right? Media wants these stories because media survives on these stories, right? And there's no sexiness in saying Vijay Iyer took a housing loan and is paying it off regularly. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, true. So Harilal, very quickly, your views on this. The opportunities in the current
Thank
market.
you so much. Right, Mr. Vijay actually point out, of course, all the thing is about the startup is doing a problem and finding a solution. Of course, in the COVID has created a new set of problem as well. If you look at the learning of from the unicorn, actually we've been successful. They've been pivoting from the early stage, right? So because they said actually looking at the idea and it is not feasible, they actually change the business model. Actually, they pivot many a time. So if you look at a very early stage, maybe they're starting right now. They look at actually where the digital transformation is happening, right? So, for example, education is getting into e-learning platform, right? And even though e-learning was earlier, people are using completely the e-learning platform. All collaboration is getting digital transformation, right? Even if you look at even incubator, they are talking about virtual incubator rather than the physical one. So everything is getting into digital transformation. So opportunity, of course, it's not going to be stopped even after COVID problem is solved, because this is an opportunity. The capital cost actually for a startup, if you look at comparing corporate startup, for a corporate actually, they may have a long lease. For startup, maybe just started using enough of lease, or maybe in an incubator center. They can actually look for the model where actually your the investment on the capital can be getting into it. Of course, the complete scenario is going to change for a long time. Even a corporate actually, even I was written an article recently. The work near home concept. Every villages have a on center near to home where actually they can start working if the government is taking a real initiative. If you provide the broadband and really capable of it's an opportunity for even from the rural area. So everything may change because people are thinking how actually I can convert the all capital capture OPEX, right? So when you look at in terms of a startup, they look at the right opportunities coming into, as Vijay earlier discussed about edutech and digital transformation, maybe the kind of a Zoom application where we are discussing kind of video conferencing, or all collaboration is getting into a thought. Suppose because you already have started a problem solving, that doesn't mean you need to completely get into entire set of new problem, because you need to see actually how actually your core competency as a founder and your co-founders in line with what are the opportunity in the market, right? That's actually we say actually founder market fit rather than generally say product market fit. nowadays people are talking about founder market. Whether the founder have the fitness with the market, so they actually really evaluate themselves instead of finding an opportunity and running behind it, right? So of course, the opportunities are there, problems are there, a new set of problems are there. You have to see whether you are capable of doing that. Is there any long-term sustainability there? We don't know. As actually, Saira was saying about, we don't know when it's going to end. So we need to find a solution that actually going to be long-term sustainable rather than looking at solving a problem for the short term, right? That's my, opinion on this.
Okay, great. Palak, a question to you, and this is something that you touched upon earlier. One, specifically with regard to medical insurance, you talked about the measures that have been taken in your company, but just to broaden that perspective further, what would be some of the measures that large organizations at this stage can take in order to make things more empathetic and really easier for the workforce, for their employees?
Like I said, it is very important at this point in time to invest in people, not just invest, by giving them medical coverage or insurance. When I say invest, I would say time, emotions, and connecting with them is also very important. While yes, we all need to at this point in time look at changing and re-looking at policies to make sure we're making the environment safe for each other, providing necessary support as and when required. I would also say that it is very important for leaders today to keep talking to their people, reach out to their workforce, understand the challenges that they're going through at this point in time. After all this is new for each one of us, not just the leaders. I think it is new for everybody. There are people who were not using technology so much, and a classic example is the education industry. See
Mm-hmm.
how uh, you know I mean, you see a drastic change in how our education industry picked up technologies. Teachers who were not trained to conduct online classes, they just did it in just 2 days. So I would say at this time that um, you know it is people do resist change, but it is up to the leaders and to the organizations to make sure how easy at this point in time they can make for them to accept the new normal. Um, and it involves emotions, calling, understanding challenges, and of course, monetary and security policies as well.
Absolutely. Sarah, we'll have the last question go to you. And I'm again clubbing questions. So, very, very briefly, we've come through 1 month of unlock, right? We're getting into unlock 2.0 and then it's going forward. Now, when you're talking about the authorities, the governments at a central as well as a state level, what would you say are the top 2 or 3 things that they must give to their citizens right now? Very briefly,
Okay.
please.
So again, like I said, health should be the top priority. Everything else should be in the backyard as of now, because the reason public health is in such an abysmal, state is because probably we never give priority to public health care. So I think right now the government agencies, along with the citizens, really need to prioritize healthcare. We need to ensure that we are COVID ready. We have enough beds going on, we have enough ventilators, we have enough machines, enough masks, enough COVID kits for our doctors, because our doctors, who are the saviors, will be hit the most, as we've already seen from the beginning of the pandemic in India as well as globally. So, firstly, ensuring that, because B, now the governments also do not have any straight answers. Like I said, it's a work in progress. Right now, what the COVID-19 has exposed is the collective vulnerability of the entire world, including the most macho of leaders. Everybody has come down on their knees because right now nobody has any straight answers.
Okay,
So,
Sarah, very briefly, we talked about public healthcare, right? So, what
right.
else?
public health care, and we need to see that our economy also is back on its rail. If certain businesses have shut, the other, we need to make that transition, and see how we can find out a way where we can learn. Because if a very very small example, it might sound inane. Now, for example, a guy whom we knew, who used to sell hardware, right, is selling vegetables, because end of the day, necessity is the mother of invention. So we all are survivors. We as a human race have known to survive, and we need to look at new ways on how to sustain ourselves, what we can do with our careers. Okay, schools, colleges, everything has shut completely, right? The
Okay.
businesses have shut, but
Sarah,
people are
we've
making
gone
the transition.
grievously. All right, thanks. We've got grievously over time. Last rejoinder that from Vijay, because I think he had a point to make.
Yeah, so I think Sarah hit the nail on the head as far as the health piece is concerned. I completely agree. I think, and the other, I think, is food security. There are lots of people outside. The priorities of this government have to, and I think they're getting it right by and large. Okay, the poor, the marginal, protecting them in terms of food security, in terms of healthcare to start with, then perhaps MSMEs, then perhaps startups and the corporate sector to some extent, then banks and financial institutions, and then perhaps other policies, right? So in that order, if the government goes, I would really think that if you look at what's happened in the stimulus, by and large, that's what's happened. That's where the money has gone. We can debate about whether it's been the most effective way of doing it or not, but I think everybody's discovering this as they go along. And by and large, I would say they've called it right.
Absolutely. We're going to have to leave it at that. So, Vijay, Iyer, Harilal, Bhaskar, Palak, Vats, and Saira Shah Halim. This has not just been an engrossing conversation, but a very important one. And I do hope people are listening. On that note, we are going to conclude this particular episode. Viewers, I hope you enjoyed this particular session and you have a few takeaways to implement in your lives as well as in your workplaces. We'll be back same time next week with another episode. Till then, stay safe. Thank you and goodbye.